Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender Ed, Blender HD. If you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Monday, March 20th. And you know what we do on Mondays? It's Mondays with McCool. We bring in James McCool, the co-author with me on the theory of daily fantasy sports. 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com, as well as the Theory for DFS for advanced players, which includes James McCool's wonderful custom Excel tools for you to use to help you select and build lineups and analyze the slate, analyze everything. So pick that up at theoryofdfs.com. Give me those thummy thumbs on your way in the door. Good morning to DFIC, Wata, Suki Singh, Bart B. Thumbs ups, questions in the chat. Send your questions in, MLB ones, right? That's what we're talking about this week and next week. We're going through the basics. MLB DFS. Questions at theoryofdfs.com. Email them in. Questions at theoryofdfs.com. James, baseball's back. Baseball's back, and it's better than ever. Hey, baseball's back.
Yeah, it's back. I mean, kind of. We don't know if we're actually going to get a season if everybody gets injured at the World Baseball Championship.
Is there any relief pitchers don't matter?
Well, relief pitchers don't matter, but who was it? It was Jose
Altuve.
Jose Altuve broke his thumb. He's out for a month. I think it's Freddie Freeman had like a hand thing. I don't know. Everybody's dying, basically. And that's what I'm trying to
do. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
No, yeah. I mean, we'll just have backups the entire time.
But it's not like basketball where it's like, oh, Freddie Freeman is out. That means you got to play like three other guys from the Dodgers because is he on the Dodgers still?
Yes.
Did he move? I don't know. I don't find out who's on what team until like the day before.
Yeah. I actually don't know right now either.
Freddie Free. I don't know. I all I know is that Jacob deGrom is on the Rangers.
Yeah. He's on the Rangers. That'll be fun for the small amount of time that he actually gets to pitch until he gets injured. That'll be great. But yeah, I'm excited for baseball season to be back. I've been putting in a lot of work on the baseball product over at PayDirt. I built a really cool thing that does it does stack permutations for different teams and then like cuts them down based on a couple different factors so that you can like see that kind of stuff. It's kind of like the first step to optimizing before I actually build an optimizer that I don't want to build because I don't want to build an optimizer.
It's very similar to Derek Hardy's stack rankings in the bat.
Yeah.
Like as far as the permutations of like here are 4-man stacks for teams, their value versus their projection, for all the combinations and then he goes like in the top 500, how many from each team are in the top 500, top 250, top 50. Like, I mean that it's very broad. It's value driven, but I mean, I'm assuming it's a similar type thing.
Yeah. So I'm using logic kind of like that, where I am putting together all the different combinations of 3, 4, and 5-man stacks. And then I'm using some logic from Theory DFS, which you can find and buy from the portfolio trimmer so that you can trim down based on projection and ownership and everything like that too. So there's going to be a lot of cool things involved in it that I think is really going to be useful. This baseball season, I'm really focusing a lot on I don't know. I'm trying to focus a little bit more on stack selection because I think in the past I have been a little bit, I don't want to say lackadaisical about it, but I probably have not focused on it enough. Like you and I have had plenty of discussions on this show about how people skip steps in stacks, like go like, or people don't want to skip steps. That they like force in the 2, 3, 4, 5 or 2, 3, 4, 6 or whatever. And you and I have both mostly agreed that while that is nice, like the extra added correlation is nice, it's not the end of the world if you end up skipping 2 spots in the order. Like you can still make that stack work. Because when you stack a team, you assume they're going to score 10 plus runs and be the team that scores the most runs on the slate. So you don't know who's going to hit the home run. Like the 8 hitter might hit a home run. The 8, 4, 3, 1 stack might crush it. I don't know. But I do want to focus a little bit more on stack selection from an ownership perspective and try to say, okay, well, yeah, I could do that, but the 2, 3, 4, 6 is not going to be as high owned as it should be. So I might as well just go with that, because that's something that I think has been a blind spot for me.
And I think it's especially useful for the chalkier teams. Like the way that you could play the Braves are going to be, over-owned. It's like, yeah, well, it's over-owned if you're going to play, these types of 5-man stacks. But if you're going to leave out Acuna, assuming he's still on the team, right?
Right.
I think he's still on the Braves. If you're going to leave off Acuna and play 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, it's like, well, that's actually under-owned,
right?
Even though it's from the most owned team. So like, there is a difference, and a lot of times these tools will show, like, of all the stack combinations you can make, the team is over-owned, but intermixed in between them are heavily owned stacks and heavily over-owned stacks, and then maybe moderately under-owned versions of that. And that gets down to, we'll talk about combinatorics, that it's not just the ownership of individual players, it's the ownership of combinations of players. And in a more correlated sport, where people are more likely to build lineups that are correlated, the ownership is also going to be correlated in some way.
Right. Yeah, and that's the other part, is whenever we talk about ownership, it's really, really important. Like with NFL, we have a little bit of correlated ownership, but not like a lot. I mean, even when people are stacking the Chiefs, all of the Travis Kelce lineups are not going to be, or I mean, the majority of Travis Kelce lineups are probably not going to be with Patrick Mahomes. I think there will be a lot, but the majority, I think, will be more one-offs, because people are going to be going with cheaper quarterback stacks and trying to get Travis Kelce as the pay up. But when we're talking about MLB, that correlation begins to get a little bit tighter. And so, if you have the catcher from the Braves, people like to include catchers in their stacks. So if there's a cheap catcher, say he's like min price on the Braves, and people are going ahead and stacking the Braves, he's likely going to be a part of a lot of Brave stacks so that you can fit Acuna and Ozzy Albies. And I don't remember who else is on the Braves, but that's something to keep in mind with correlated ownership.
Well, for the first show in our MLB DFS series, I know we're talking about all these concepts like, correlation and stacking and projection value, which obviously are concepts in the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's the basics of, how to play DFS. But let's say you're starting to play MLB DFS and you have nothing. You got nothing, James. You got nothing at all. Okay. So you don't got projections, right? You don't have a RotoGrinder subscription, right? So you don't have the bat, right? You have nothing. Maybe you don't know much about baseball at all, right? Just like, I don't know who's on the Dodgers normally, let alone if Freddie Freeman's still on the Dodgers, right? So if you were approaching MLB DFS, and we'll separate a little bit the difference between GPPs and more cash-oriented games. If you were starting MLB DFS and you just didn't have anything, right? I think that MLB is one of the few sports that you could actually make competitive lineups. Competitive. They may not be the best lineups, right? They may not be the highest EV lineups, but I think you can make competitive lineups without projections, without anything other than what's freely available, without doing any math, really. And I mean, maybe for some first grade math, just heuristically, just based on how the three concepts of projection, correlation, and leverage, without getting the most bluntest version of it. And I just wanted to go over on today, like what those heuristics would be. That if you didn't have anything, you're just like, I'm going to play one baseball slate, right? It's very similar to when they used to give out like tickets for free rolls in other sports. Like, oh, I got a hockey ticket. I don't know nothing about hockey, but it's like, how is the DFS game played? So I could put together a competitive lineup. I don't plan on playing NHL DFS past today, But like, I at least want to have a competitive lineup. And of course, someone would say, well, just pick lines on teams, right? And don't play your goalie against an attacker, like kind of like that type of thing. Same thing in soccer. It's like, okay, I don't know who to play in soccer. It's like play set piece takers, play wide players, and play guys with high goal scoring odds. And don't play the defenders against, play cheap wide players at defense by default as a heuristic. And that's probably okay. In MLB DFS, what would some of those heuristics be?
Stack teams with high totals. Don't play.
Let's get into that one. Let's go item by item.
All right.
Because stack team with high totals actually is actually two heuristics in one.
Okay.
So let's first get into we talked about it just now with stacking.
Yeah.
Right. So stacking is a form of correlation. Stacking meaning that playing multiple players, multiple hitters from the same team.
Mm-hmm.
And DraftKings, you're allowed up to 5.
Yep.
FanDuel, you're allowed up to 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a heuristic, if you were to go and say, okay, I'm going to play a lineup. I have 8 batter spots on DraftKings. Like, okay, I'm going to stack a team. Should I stack 5 people and then 3 people from another team? Should I stack 4 people and then 4 people from another team? Should I play 3 from one team, 3 from another team, 2 from another team? Should I ever be playing like one-off batters as a heuristic? Meaning that if you were to give someone a rule that they could blindly follow and go, you're least likely to make a mistake and more likely to make a competitive lineup, what would you tell them?
5 stack. Stack 5 people from one team on DraftKings. Stack the most that you can on whatever site you're playing.
And how about the other spots? How about the other spots in the
lineup? I hate these like, oh, just give me a super basic answer, because there's no basic answer here.
No, but I'm saying as a heuristic, I would say, James, that you'd take 3 from some other team.
3 from some other team. See, right. and I was gonna say you should try to have one-off that's cheap so that you can have a competitive pitcher. But I get like the heuristic breaks down there, because now we've gotten into pitchers and everything like that.
Right. Well, if you just went into the slate and said for 8 spots in your lineup, right, on DraftKings, and you have the 2 pitcher spots, and on FanDuel you only have 1 pitcher spot. Then if you just went in and said, what 2 teams do I want to play? I want you, and you can choose whatever 2 teams you want. We're not going to get to the second part of your sentence. I don't know I know that there's 13 games today and there's 26 teams playing. I could close my eyes and randomly pick 2 teams, randomly, and play whatever fits within my salary cap with the 2 pitchers, and we'll get to that. 5 from one team and 3 from the other.
Yeah.
Right. And then just whatever fills as much of your salary as possible. And we'll get into that also, but like just fit in 5 from one team and 3. It's like, well, do I have to play them in order 2, 3, 4? No, just 5 from one team and 3 from the other. The 5 could be 6. It could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It could be 1, 5, 7 from what it. Don't worry about any of that from a heuristic standpoint. So just 5, 3. Just pick. I'm going to play the Tigers and the Mariners. Okay. Like, as you would be more likely, James, to build a competitive lineup than if you went in and say, well, I'm going to play 5 one-offs and maybe 2 guys from one team.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd absolutely be more competitive. Absolutely.
Now, the next question would be, heuristically, I'm going to build a lineup with 8 batters in it, 5 from one team, 3 from the other. How do I choose the teams? If I wanted to choose the teams better from a value standpoint, meaning that what makes one team more likely to score more fantasy points than other teams, how would you go about doing that?
How attractive they are.
Yeah, physically attractive? We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into the attractiveness model, just like in NFL.
Yeah, that's actually how Margaret builds lineups. My wife, she builds lineups for baseball based on how attractive hitters are.
Does
so
she
that's
stack
her.
at least? Does she stack the attractiveness?
No, unfortunately not. No.
Well, that's
she
why
only
she
plays
doesn't
cash
do that.
games, so it's not necessary for
Oh,
her.
okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
okay.
so I'm gonna take 5 players from one team and 3 from another.
Mm-hmm.
How do I choose? How? Why would I take one team over the other? What would be a factor in that?
Based on team totals. If we're going with heuristics, then the teams with the higher team totals are going to typically score more runs and typically score more fantasy points.
Okay, team totals.
Yes.
We go. Where do I find those? Because remember, I have nothing. Like what would be a team? How do I figure out what the team's total is?
Google Vegas team totals MLB.
So basically, what you're saying is go look on a sports book. Go look at the betting lines.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, if we're using a heuristic here, people don't know what a sports book is. Just go Google.
Oh well, I mean that obviously they get. I'm talking about they don't have resources for DFS purposes.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, how do I find this for free, right? And go, I'm just going to look at the sportsbook lines, the totals of the games, and how large the spreads are between the two teams. Mm-hmm. And mathematically, you could figure out implied team totals. Of course, you could also find that, like you could Google implied team totals MLB, and someone will break down. You'll find that.
Yeah.
So you'll
maybe you'll even find RotoGrinders if you do that.
Right. Well, yeah, we have that for free on RotoGrinders also. So you could look at our preview like that we have every day for baseball, that shows all the starting pitchers and all the implied team totals and stuff like that. We publish that every day. So for free. So you don't even have to be a subscriber for that. So you can just look at that.
Yep.
So it's the type of thing where the game has a 10 total. Mm-hmm. And one team may have the implied team total of 5.8, and one would have 4.2, and that's all based on the money line between the two teams. So then one team A has, 5.8. You may look at another game that has an 8 total, and one team is 4.2, the other team is 3.8. Mm-hmm. You may look at a game that has a 9 total, and one side actually is 6.2. Mm-hmm. And the other side is 2.8. Like, just because the total may be lower than other games, but one side is heavily favored. It's typically one of the games where a good offensive team with the ace pitcher is facing like some garbage offensive team.
It's usually the Yankees versus the Pirates. It's usually
right. Or you're right. At Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
Right. So if you just looked at the team totals and said, okay, the two teams that I choose, the 5-3, I'm gonna target the teams that have the higher implied team totals, because if I didn't have projections, those would be the ones that are more likely to project from a raw points perspective better.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
Like you're not yet, James. In your projections, the team that has an implied total under 3, are they ever going to project well from a raw standpoint?
Not as a full team, no. Maybe you'll get, I mean, if we go back to the Pirates example here, maybe you'll get Brian Reynolds projected very well, but most of the team is going to project very badly.
But even Brian Reynolds probably won't project well from a raw standpoint. Players may project well from a value standpoint.
No, I mean, when I break it down, I don't break it down completely based off of Vegas totals. So I guess I'm the wrong person to ask on that.
Right. But it is a fact, like the amount of runs that a team is likely to score in a game means two things. Okay, because people get the first one easily. They don't get the second one, and the second one may actually be more important, or at least as important as the first. A team that is more likely to score more runs, obviously, there's more points for them to. I mean, if I told you a team's going to score 8 runs, well, they're going to get fantasy points, right? If I told a team that's only going to score 2 runs,
right?
Like they could leave tons of people on base, right? They could be steals, and they could get a bunch of fantasy points even without scoring many runs. But a team that scores 10 runs is it's unlikely you're going to take a stack of players that on a team that scores 10 runs, assuming no pinch hitters or anything like that, that you're not going to get several of the players that do well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That have scored in the double digits or something like that.
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to find those teams. You're right that the more runs scored is very, very highly correlated with more fantasy points.
And what happens when a team scores more runs?
Then more of the players are involved in those runs scored.
Oh, but what additionally happens? Like, let's say it's the third inning, and like they're at the top of the order.
Yeah.
No, that's not. No, that is true. If in the third inning, first guy gets on base, gets a walk. Second guy, it's a double. Second and third. Third guy gets a walk. It's now bases loaded. Fourth guy gets a hit, 2-run score.
Yeah.
Fifth guy hits a home run. Whatever. The sixth, like what happens by the seventh or eighth inning? Like what is happening as no outs are being recorded? As few outs are being recorded.
It's just more people rounding bases and scoring runs and scoring fantasy points.
And what in turn is that doing? Giving batters more at bats.
Oh, more opportunities, more at bats.
More opportunities to score points. So like if I told you, James, I'm not going to tell you this. I'm not going to tell you how many runs the team score. Would you rather stack 5 hitters from a team where each of their hitters in your stack will get 4 at bats, 4 plate appearances, or a 5-man stack of all 5 players getting 6 plate appearances?
Obviously, the second one, more opportunity.
But in the first one, in 4 plate appearances, all of them could have hit a grand slam. I mean, that is possible. Right?
Yeah, but we're also dealing with a sport where event-oriented things matter. And the more opportunities that you get, the more chances you have at events. So if all of those guys hit a grand slam in all 4 of their plate appearances, then you're missing out on 2 more grand slams that could be hit in the next 2 plate appearances.
Because you can't score fantasy points when you're on the bench. Like, you need plate appearances in order to score points. You need to get on base in order to score runs. And this is the reason why we saw during the COVID period when they had those 7-inning doubleheaders, right? And then you'd look at the teams and like they never projected well.
No,
it's like, because you're taking away 2 possible innings of plate appearances. I mean, like you have to literally take away, like, on average, 1 plate appearance per batter.
On the other hand, pitchers projected wonky because you could get a complete game shutout if they pitch through 7 innings.
Right.
What an annoying period of trying to project things. That was so dumb.
But that's the basis of it. So you want to play teams that have high implied team totals. They would typically project from a raw points perspective. Their salaries may be higher. Just understand that the Yankees have a 6.2 implied run total, and in order to stack them, you have to go mortgage your house in order to spend for all five batters. So it's quite possible you may not be able to get to them. But in general, as a heuristic at hitter, completely general, if you just did that, said, I'm going to look at the implied team totals, then I'm going to find a way to stack 5 from one of the higher ones and 3 from another one of the higher ones. And these slates are, I mean, we have like 10-game, 12-game slates. So it's like look at the top 5, 6 team total teams. I mean, like, and pick 2 of them. I mean, just like if you just did that, James, does it have to be any more complicated than that?
It does not have to be any more.
It doesn't have, right. The key word is have to be.
Right.
But that's why today's show is all about heuristics of someone that was playing NFL DFS, never played baseball, whatever. Just like, I'm coming in, I just want to build competitive lineups. We'll get into the detail to make your lineups higher EV past that. But just from today's standpoint, I want to be clear on heuristically, if you stuck to these heuristics, because we're going to get into more detail on other shows, and we're going to start talking throughout the season, and people make MLB DFS so much more complicated than what it is, that I want them to be able to reference, like, here are the heuristics. It's like, instead of spending 6 hours on all this other crap, let's get down to the heuristics of, like, you're debating, should I stack 4? Should I stack 5? It's like, well, heuristically, stack as many as you can, right? If you could make a lineup with the two teams that it's a 4-4, then do it that way. Fine. Let's not debate this. It's heuristically, stack as many people from one team, and then the rest of your spots stack another team.
Yep.
Like, well, I can't fit the 3. Instead of fitting 3 guys from this team, I can fit a one-off Mike Trout in this lineup instead. Is that okay? Like that? Yeah, that's okay. Right? That's not like, oh, you broke, you have to stack. That's just like, but by default, you were just coming right into MLB DFS. Just pick 2 teams with high team totals and stack them.
Yep.
Okay. From a value standpoint, what is as a heuristic, from a value and variance standpoint, what is the difference between pitchers and batters?
Pitchers have a much narrower range of outcomes based on projection. So it's much more likely that if a pitcher is projected for 15 fantasy points, that they'll score somewhere between 10 and 20. Whereas hitters have a much wider range of outcomes and can get you literally 0. Every single hitter's floor is 0, but they can score significantly more than their projection. So from a value standpoint, typically what we will see is that people will go after value pitchers if they are available and spend up at hitter because they are more consistent, even though
that's the complete opposite of heuristically what you should be doing.
Right. Yeah.
And the reasoning why pitchers are less variant than batters is simply due to sample size. It's simply due to a pitcher is going to pitch like 100 pitches in a game. A batter is going to get 3 to 5 plate appearances. So to get to their expected out, just like if you played DFS, right? I want to see whether or not if you pitted the Utica versus rando person in DFS, and he said, we're going to judge your play by 4. You build one lineup for 4 slates, right? Each, right? You each get to build one lineup for 4 slates. How much of an edge does the Utica have over some random person? 4 slates versus 100 slates.
Right. Yeah, I mean, over 100 slates, he's going to be well over. But in 4 slates, anything can happen.
Right. And 100 slates, anything can happen also, but it's going to be less variant. If you said 100,000 slates, I'd say that the random person has almost no shot.
Yeah.
I
would say literally no shot.
Right. So that's the reason why pitchers are less variant than hitters. And that's why a $6,000 Mike Trout or Ronald Acuna or Julio Rodriguez or whatever can easily go over 4. I mean, like, that's not out of that. I mean, that happens a lot, actually, right? Yeah. And it's also because MLB is event driven. The lowest, the crappiest hitter in the league could hit a home run that day. Yeah. And maybe he's only home run for the season, right? I mean, like, he may have 2 stolen bases and a triple or something, and like best game of the season, but he's 2,700, batting 9th. It's Nicky Lopez for the Royals. Yeah. Right? Like someone like that. I mean, just like the top pitcher in the league could give up a home run to the 8th hitter on the Pirates. Yeah. Like that happens. Now, you have a lot of those types of people to choose from. You don't know which ones those are going to be, but you could outscore a 6K hitter with a 3K hitter like way more than you could do a 6K pitcher versus a 12K pitcher. Right. Exactly. Right. A 12K pitcher most likely is going to score significantly more on average than a 6K pitcher. So spending your money at pitcher has more value than spending your money at hitter. Mm-hmm. Yep, totally agree with that. Now let's get to starting pitcher heuristics. You don't know anything about baseball, right? You're just coming in. You know the sportsbook lines. We have the preview page on RotoGrinders, so it'll show you all the it'll show you here's the starting pitchers, here's the implied team totals, stuff like that, and maybe some pitcher stats, right? Maybe they'll show like the projected pitch count and the strikeout rate, right? Maybe it'll show you some of that type of stuff. Okay, I need to play 2 pitchers. What's the heuristics on selecting a pitcher?
Take the pitcher against the team with the lowest team total now.
Okay, that's one possible heuristic. It's not the only one.
Well, we were going step by step with hitters.
Step by step. Okay. So teams that have very low implied team totals, the pitcher that's starting is probably not going to give up many runs against those teams. But not giving up runs is not the way that ceiling works for pitcher in DFS necessarily, because you could have Zach Greinke against a 2.8 implied team total, and he'll go and he'll pitch 6 innings with 4 hits and 1 strikeout and give up no runs, and it's like, okay, thank God he was only 6,500, because he's probably not going to put up 40 points ever.
Yeah. Right.
So what are other starting pitcher heuristics?
High strikeout rates. We care about a lot. We care a lot about that. And pitchers in. I don't want to say pitchers in position to get the win, because that kind of stuff doesn't really matter all that much. But some people like to focus on that. I'd say that strikeout rate is probably the most important one.
I'd say that the 3 things in combination would be low implied team total. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't be number 1. That would be actually the last.
That's by far.
Strikeout rate and pitch count.
Okay, sure.
Pitch count, view it the same, especially now. I mean, maybe it wasn't like this 20 years ago, but pitch count is very similar to what we talked about with hitters. The more opportunities for points. Now, obviously, pitchers will get negative, so sometimes pitch count is bad for them. Mm-hmm. But typically, they're knocked out of the game by that point. But there's a big difference between playing Domingo Germán and playing Hunter Green.
Right.
It's like Domingo Germán. I mean, if we go by last year's example, a lot of times he did not pitch more than like 75 pitches for the Yankees.
Right.
But he could strike out 8 in 5 minutes. Like, if he's very efficient, he could do very well. Now, Hunter Green, on the other hand, the Reds have thrown him out for 110 pitches before, even with him giving up 3 home runs.
Right.
And he struck out 14. I mean, like because they just give him a long leash. So his ceiling is not tied as much to efficiency as Domingo Germán. So, like, when you take a look at pitch count, why do you think my favorite type of pitcher is someone like Lance Lynn, mm-hmm. right? Trevor Bauer when he was in the league, right? The strikeout pitchers that could pitch 120 pitches. Mm-hmm. Like, they have the highest ceiling. They may not be the best pitchers in the league, but it's so much more opportunity than a guy like who for the Rays. What's his name?
Oh,
McLaughlin or whatever.
Yeah, I mean they have a
McClanahan, and they would never give him more than, like, sometimes he'd get. Oh no, he's already pitched 90 pitches. He's out in the middle of the 4th.
Yeah, Joe Ryan was another one that had that.
Right, but I mean, if you looked at that, and it's like, okay, I want to choose 2 pitchers. I'm going to choose 2 pitchers that, for the context of the slate, because obviously, someone with a 24% strikeout rate, like, could be the highest on the slate. Some slates it may be the 7th highest strikeout rate. So I want to pay for 2 pitchers that are more likely to go at least 5 innings for the win. I mean, to go as long as possible, strike out the most batters, go up against the lowest implied team total. But to me, that's sometimes the least important. I don't mind if they give up 3 runs, if they get 10 strikeouts. It doesn't. I mean, from a ceiling perspective, it doesn't matter to me as much. They can make that up. And in general, because of the variance at pitcher is so much lower than the variance at hitter, I'd be more inclined to spend my money at pitcher.
Yeah.
Does that mean you spend for 2 12K pitchers? No, because then your sacrifice is that you can't play 2 high team total stacks, right? So it's like there is a give and take. You only have a 50K salary cap. But in general, I want to play 2 pitchers that can get strikeouts, right? Can last longer in a game. And that's pretty much it. And I want to a lot of times I'm spending somewhere in the 18 to 20K range total, right? 18, a 10K pitcher and an 8K pitcher. And it typically leaves you in 32K or so to spend on a 5-3 reasonably. You may not be able to have stacked the 5 best hitters from whatever team, but usually you could stack, like, if you're going to stack the Cardinals, assuming these people still play for the Cardinals, like, you may not be able to get Goldschmidt and Arenado, like, right? But you should get one of them at least, right? Like, you may not be able to get Aaron Judge and Stanton, but you should be getting one of them, right? You're probably not stacking the teams with not the best hitters, so any of the best hitters in the lineup. So in general, pay up for pitcher and pay for strikeouts.
Yeah, I think that the pitch count one is a really interesting heuristic to put in here, because it really is, and I know that we're not getting super into context here, but I do want to give one context thing there, that the price matters a lot on pitch count. And this can be, we'll get deeper into this later on. Maybe you'll talk about it, more of the specific stuff over the week. But that context of, yeah, he has a 75 pitch count, but if he's 4K and cheaper,
right, then that's value oriented. I'm
right, but that's the only context.
We're not even talking about value oriented anything. We're just talking about raw. We don't have once we have projections, we don't have to care. We don't have to care about raw versus value, because we have those numbers in front of us. These are for people that how would I know something is of value or not? I wouldn't. I just want to know. I want to know what are the best raw plays, and I'll just whittle my way down from there. It's like the best way to do that is like, who are the highest scoring teams to imply team totals, and who is the top strikeout rate, pitch count, and going up against the lowest team total teams. And if that happens to be, it's like, oh, on this slate, it's whoever. It's Blake Snell, and he's 9,700. It's like, okay, I'm playing him.
Yep.
Like, you don't have to know any other context. Like, yeah, can your lineups be higher EV with, like, getting the actual numbers, getting actual projections? Obviously. But we want to start from the heuristic standpoint, so we have something to fall back on.
Yep.
Right?
You're right.
I'm doing this for 2 reasons, James. I'm going through the heuristics for 2 reasons. One, help people that, hey, this is a free show. Hit those thumbs. Maybe you don't want to spend. You don't want to pay for RotoGrinders Premium, right? You don't want to click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. Maybe you don't want to get Cardi's the bat projection system. Maybe you don't want to make your own. You don't have you're playing more for entertainment. Because if you don't have projections, to me, are table stiff. If you want to be a serious profitable player, you need models. You need projections of some type. Even make them rudimentary, make them your own. Have a way to turn player names into numbers. But if you don't, like, to me, I think you could, if someone wanted to spend $15, $18, whatever, the fadeaway on DraftKings or the $4 large field on FanDuel or something, and said, I just want to have a competitive, I just want to know I have a competitive lineup that has a legitimate shot at first place, that can't be that much worse than professional players' lineups, that you're more likely to get there on FanDuel by whoever's the most expensive pitcher, play them and stack 2 teams of 4. Yep. Like if you just played the highest priced pitcher, it's more likely that pitcher probably has the highest strikeout rate and the highest projected anyway. There are some cases where maybe the guy that's 300 cheaper may actually project better than that. But like I said, we're not talking about, you don't have those numbers. But in general, FanDuel, you're probably playing the most expensive. If you just did that every slate for $4, I think maybe you end up breaking even. But I mean, like, you probably have a shot at first. I mean, because 20% of the lineups don't do that.
Yeah,
like 25% of the lineups may not even have a stack in their lineup. So like you're already ahead of all those people, and just build that lineup. And on DraftKings, it's a little bit more complicated because you have to play 2 pitchers. So you have to divvy it out. Like, do I play up? Do I play 2 in the middle? So it's a little bit harder. But just that's all we're looking for. And then the second reason I'm going through this is that for the people that are going to sign up for RotoGrinders, Combo Premium, get MLB and NBA, get MMA, get PGA, get all of it. Right? You're going to sign up. You're going to click on the link in the description. You're going to buy the bat if you want from Cardi. If you do get that, people just get inundated by number. They go, oh, all this stuff to look at. Do I do this? And then they go into lineup HQ. They're in lineup HQ. Do I play 5-2-1 and I set up my stack rules and I have how many uniques, and they go through all this, and next thing you know, I start getting questions that are like 17 levels too deep, and I'm like, dude, this game isn't that hard. It's pretty simple. Like, just get back to heuristics. Like, when in doubt, it's like, do I play this lineup or that lineup? It's like the difference between those 2 lineups are like the how much 1 grain of sand is on a beach.
Right.
Either flip a coin or by default say, I'm just going to play 5-3 stacks.
Yep.
Right. Or by default say, I'm just going to play the pitcher with the higher strikeout rate. It's like, yeah, but they project a 0.5 point difference. Just play the guy with the higher strikeout rate. Like, there you go. Just the end of story. Like, heuristically, if you have to make a decision on it, truthfully, the decision probably doesn't even matter. That's how
I was
close
gonna
it
say,
is to
man,
50-50.
as soon as we get into the season and people are asking questions of like, oh, well, would you play this guy or this guy? And their difference of 0.5 point. It's like, do you know what 0.5 point is in MLB? You know what 0.5 point is? It's a quarter of the way to a walk.
Right? It's 1 ball.
Yeah.
It's
literally a single ball in a plate appearance. You know what 1 point is for a strikeout? It's 1 strike in a plate appearance. Like, you just, as long as you follow the heuristics and as long as you follow the general framework of how to build lineups, a lot of it just falls in place. And that suggestion of just play the most expensive pitcher on FanDuel and stack 4-4, I would love for somebody to just do that the entire year. Do nothing else, but in the $4, just take the most expensive pitcher, and then just like on lineup HQ, even just take the most expensive pitcher, lock them in, set 4-4 stack, and just go and just do it the entire year. And like, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have less than like a negative 4 or 5% ROI, like at worst.
At worst. Probably, I'd say I think that with a limited amount of lineups, you'd be profitable.
I think you'd have a very good chance of being profitable. Like,
I'm talking about limited amount of lineups. Like, you only play like 5 to 10 lineups.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think legitimately, if you were going to play, it's so funny, Jordan. Every year we have this discussion. We've had this discussion 3 years straight with baseball when we're coming into it, and we're like, if you were to literally just play this pitcher, like the most expensive pitcher, and just stack, you would probably have a chance at profitability in MLB.
Right.
Every single year.
And that's because people don't listen, because people still
Either
you still have people that put in bad lineups.
Yep.
Still got that all the time. And then you have people that overthink it. And they're just like, oh no, well, I got to do this. And then next thing you know, their lineups are all like wacky.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you did all of that. And I'm not saying that those lineups are bad, but those lineups don't have any different expected value than the lineups that you made in half a second.
And they spent so much time on it. It's like people are building for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And it's like, we've had another discussion on the show where we broke down the amount of time that you can spend building your lineups to beat minimum wage. You remember when we talked through that?
Right.
Yeah. We had that discussion, and it ended up being, you would be better off getting a part-time job at McDonald's than building these lineups in terms of the ROI that a lot of people are spending. If you're spending like 4 hours building lineups and you're not playing with incredible volume, your ROI is just shot.
the top DFS players that I know that multi-entry, multiple sites, most of them, their quote process is under 10 minutes.
Yep.
So if you're I'm going to play single entry, I'm going to play 3 max, I'm going to play a cash lineup or whatever. Like I've shown what my cash process would be in MLB on the show. I basically loaded in projections and clicked a button and said that's my lineup.
Yep.
like there you go. Like, what should you be spending your time on? Like that is what it is. Like heuristically, like that's going to be better. Like anything you do past there, like you've already gotten 95% of the way there. So everything you're doing is only the last 5% of everything. And how much is that worth?
Right.
Is it worth spending 4 hours on? No, it's not. To me, it's not. If you just enjoy doing so and you don't mind wasting the time, go, okay, fine. But it's not a good use of resources.
Yeah. So let's add that in as one of the last heuristics here. Don't overthink things.
No, yeah, I think that is the last tier. What we discussed, and don't overthink things. And also, once you get projections, you don't have to look. Like if you had projections, all the heuristics, some of these heuristics you could actually throw out.
Yeah.
Like oh, I'm gonna get the bat. I'm gonna look at the projections, and then I'm gonna choose the teams with the highest implied team total. Like that's already factored in the projections, right? Like you don't have to do that anymore. Oh, let me pick the pitcher with the strikeout rate of, like, you don't have to do that anymore. It's already in the projection, right? Like all of that type of stuff, it's already in the projection. So once you have projections, what exactly are you doing? I want to build lineups heuristically, 5 players from one team, 3 players from another team. So let me just see those lineups and give me what are the highest projected lineups that look like that? Let me play those.
Yep.
Like if you just did that. Now, obviously you can increase the expected value of your lineup with leverage, right? Now you're factoring in ownership, but I'm not considering that a heuristic at all. Now we're getting to increase the EV of your lineup. But if you just wanted competitive lineups, you're like, I don't want to be, I want to make sure that like I'm not just punting my money away. You could go to Lineup HQ with our RotoGrinders projections. Set a stack rule of 5-3 and click build one lineup.
Yep.
And then just play that lineup. If you literally just wanted to play one lineup for the sweat, and you want to make sure it's going to, like, literally, that's it. You're done. You're literally done at that point. You're done.
Yeah.
So if that lineup is competitive and possibly plus EV, imagine all the stuff that you're doing out there, right? The audience looking at this, doing that, switching around. Like, dude, I just told I could go to some dude off the street. I go to my wife, who doesn't watch baseball at all, doesn't do any of this. I go to my wife. I said, okay, I'm going to give you a bookmark, and it's Lineup HQ, and I'm going to give you a little video, a little instructions on how to. You could probably save these as default settings also. So it's like, once you set the stack rule as a default setting, and you have all the settings, all you have to do is load those settings and press the build button, and then the lineup that you see in the first lineup, go into your app or whatever, and put those people in.
Yep.
And then enter it into whatever GPP.
Yeah.
Like, if I could tell my wife to do that, and she would possibly be profitable. It's a high likelihood that would end up being profitable. What the hell? What is anyone else doing that could be that dramatically different than that? That if that could be profitable to do so. So that's the overthinking part of like, dude, once everything is factored into all the projections, and once you understand just why correlation matters so much in baseball, and how the batter projections are so much more high variant than pitcher projections. Like, dude, you want to build 5 lineups? then play 5 line and like, oh well, I want to build a lineup with this pitcher. Okay, so click on that pitcher and then do the same thing. 5-3 it, and I only want to play this team in 3 out of the 5 lineups. Okay, so build 3 of those lineups and then X out that team, and then build the other 2 lineups with whatever's left. It's like, well, I have the batter from my 5-man stack is 2, 3, 6, 8, 9. Is that okay? Yes, that's fine. Is it 5 guys from one team? Yes. Okay. Stop overthinking this. That's it. You're done. All the plate appearance stuff is already factored into the projections.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting the value of what it is anyway. So who cares if you got to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, no, that's you don't have to play. They're all the batters on the same team are correlated with each other. Mm-hmm. What happens if this guy gets pinch hit? He's a platoon hitter. It's like, you know what? That's factored in the projections. like everything's there. Everything's there. Just get him. But even if you didn't have the projections, you could probably get to the same lineups.
Yep.
Right? Oh my God. Coors has a 14.5 team total. Has a 14.5 total with both teams with a 7 team total. And they mispriced the visiting team.
And the Giants are all priced at $3K. So now we have to play the Giants in Coors.
Right. What do I do? It's like that. Build that lineup. You're good.
Yeah. So
anything else?
No, we have a couple questions. But the heuristics here are for hitters, stack 2 teams as much as you can stack from both teams. If you're on FanDuel, that's 4-4. On DraftKings, 5-3. Look for, when you're stacking those, look for teams with the highest team totals. For pitchers, look to follow Blender's 3 rules of success for pitching, which is attack teams with low team totals, high strikeout rates, and high pitch counts. And the final and largest piece of this is don't overthink it.
Right.
There you go.
Right. There you go.
There you go.
Do we need to bother doing any more shows? That's it. Yeah, that's MLB DFS in a nutshell.
That's all. Yep, that's all. Okay. Well, let's go home. We're good. I'm done.
We're good. We're gonna make millions of dollars, right? No?
I plan on making at least tens of hundreds of dollars this MLB season.
Okay. That's pretty good.
ANS Comedy said, how do you think about combinatorics? I get the theory of it, but how do you put a number on the different combos, even if it's just directionally? Combinatorics is a theory that the way that you're applying it is really just saying, here is a set list of things. How can I arrange them in all of the ways possible? I won't get super in depth in this, but it is important to understand that the difference between a permutation and a combination. Permutations is all of the combinations of things in a list without worrying about the order that they are in, and combinations are worrying about the order that they are in.
No, the opposite version. The opposite.
Is it the opposite?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the opposite. So
like a permutation is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Combination permutation 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2. Like those are different from one another, but a combination of 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1 is all counts the same because it's
that's
the
what
same
I meant.
combination of 3 things.
Yeah. So it's important to know the difference of those 2 things, but when you're thinking about combinatorics, mostly you don't have to think that in depth on it. Just understand the difference between combinations and permutations, and that's all you really need to do. For the purposes of DFS, you care a lot more about combinations than you do permutations. But if you want to get in depth on it, you can go study on Wikipedia.
Or you could get the theory of DFS for advanced players.
Or you could get theory of DFS for advanced players, because we do talk about it in Blender talks about it in the audio.
Right. There's literally an entire chapter.
Yes. Yep.
We talk about it in the fun that we talk about it in the first course, but we don't call it. We call it lineup construction. We talk about the concepts of combinatorics, but the more detailed I talk about in the advanced course.
Right. Yeah.
And for the most part, you're considering combinatorics when it comes for the leverage piece.
Right.
Not so much of like the projection piece.
Right.
Like meaning that individual player ownership matters less than combinatorial player ownership. Meaning that if this guy is high owned, how many of those lineups also contain player A, player B, player C, and how many of those blocks of 4 players are together versus lineups that don't have all 4 players together. So this is where it comes into. I mean, this is obviously I could talk about this on future shows. I mean, this is a topic in and of itself. That when people talk about, oh, let's say there's 4 high-owned players on a slate, and they go, well, I'm gonna fade the chalk. I'm gonna fade all 4. It's like, you don't have to fade all 4 because they project very well. Like, you're giving up way too much projection. It's like, well, I don't want to play all 4 of them. Well, some people like, I'll play all 4 of the chalky pieces. I'll get different elsewhere. Mm-hmm. You're not getting as different as you think you are because the player block of all 4 of those players are in so many lineups.
Right.
Even if you just went to 3 out of the 4, you've now eliminated a large percentage of lineups that look exactly like that.
Right.
Like, just simply by only playing 3 out of the 4. By playing 2 out of the 4, you're knocking out even more lineups that you're different from. And then there are also, depending on the salary and positional distributions, where, oh, well, this guy is 15% owned and this guy is 15% owned. And I'm going to play both of them together in a lineup with this high-owned player and that high-owned player. And it's like, well, you don't realize that the 15% ownership on these 2 players are primarily in lineups with the other 2 players that you just have in the lineup, because that's why they're 15% owned, because you have to pay down at power forward and pay up at center, and those would be the 2 best plays at those positions, and that's why they're 15%, because you're playing the value shooting guard and the value small forward, right? Like, you don't realize, 50% doesn't sound like a lot of ownership individually until if you extrapolated all the lineups in the contest, you'd go, out of these 15%, like 11 of the 15% contains both of those 2 players in it. Mm-hmm. Like, you didn't get rid of a lot of combinations that you thought you were getting rid of because of combinatorics. So that's the way that lineups are outlined. You'd rather have similar lineups with similar projections at similar ownership at lower frequency usage.
Right.
So, like, if you could find a lineup that's like, okay, here's a lineup that projects at X, is owned at Y, that has these 8 players in it, let's say for basketball. And it's like, I can find a lineup that projects for the same, at the same total ownership, but shares 4 less players with that lineup.
Right.
Like, I'd rather play that lineup, right? Because it's mathematically it's the same, but it's shared by less people. Even though it's the same total ownership, it's actually the combinations of players inside of the lineup are shared by less lineups. There's a lot of lineups that if player A and player B both do well, it's tied to the results of player C and player D because they're in so many more lineups together. You'd rather have it that I want player A to do well, player B to do badly, and it ruins the lineups that have player C and D in it because they're in so many of those lineups. But I don't mind playing player C and D in this lineup because I'm not sharing the lineup construction of these other lineups. So it's like, I'm not as reliant as these 4 or 5 players together. And you'll find this a lot. You will find this in baseball because of the correlated nature of the sport.
Yeah, we even talked a lot about it in NFL when we were looking at the permutation tool that we have for the
portfolio correlation
matrix. Yeah, we have portfolio correlation matrix in the advanced players course for Theory DFS. We talk a lot about that in NFL, and I'm sure that we'll talk a lot about it in baseball as well, where you can run together and see what players have the highest correlation score for the lineups that you enter in. And then you can go back into lineup HQ and you can set rules to make sure that you can avoid that kind of thing so that you still have really well projected lineups, but you're now avoiding the most common combinations of the players that project well.
Right. Because you'll find, I'll show throughout the season that tool, because you'll find that, on the day where this team is underpriced, like, the 5-man stack comes up for them, but who fits in that 5-man stack? You'll see, it's Ohtani and Trout in the outfield. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're gonna play the cheap twin stack for value, like a lot of those lineups are gonna have Ohtani, Trout in the outfield, or they're gonna have Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo or whatever. Like, and you go, okay, how do I play those teams, but just don't play the combinations of those? Mm-hmm. Like, I can still play the Twins, just not with Judge.
Yeah.
Or I could still play the Yankees, just not with Jorge Polanco or whatever, you know, whatever player comes up more often. So you're playing the same teams, you're just competing against less lineups. So that's the basics of what combinatorics are. But
good question. It's a really good question.
So let's get out of here, and I'll be going over more MLB DFS stuff throughout the course of this week and next week, leading up to opening day. James, Paydirt_DFS on Twitter.
Yep, Paydirt_DFS on Twitter and paydirtdfs.com. I'm putting together all the baseball tools and everything like that right now. So pretty excited to continue working through that. And we have basketball continuing through. We still have esports. We still have, you know, all the different things. So pretty good time to be a DFS player.
Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Give me those thumbs. Send in your questions at theoryofdfs.com, especially MLB ones, because I'll be going through all the DFS MLB primer stuff this week and next week. So I'll see you tomorrow answering your DFS strategy questions like I always do here Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.